I have generalized to deep learning and the human brain. So if you look at the human brain, just a second, madam, I'm getting some echo effects. I'll just check my settings. Am I audible now, madam?
I can put in the presentation mode, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just start with some introduction to the human brain, right? As all of you know that human brain is the most developed product, right, that we can see on our planet, and this is an outcome of millions of years of evolution. So the most developed product, if you visualize, it is the human brain. So if it is the most developed, it will also be the most complex, right? So if you look at the layout of a human brain, right, you have the cortex, you have the basal ganglia, you have the frontal lobe, you have the cerebellum, right? So if you look at the figure, I have taken also the occipital lobe. I have taken a few terminologies. Why I have taken these few terminologies is because that it will be related to our discussions in the future slides, right? So in the initial days, when AI was getting evolved, right, we would say that the fifth generation machines or the artificial intelligence based machines will overtake the human beings. One day computers will rule us, right? This was the perception. But in the mid 1990s, we saw that artificial intelligence did not live up to its expectation. It was scientifically not progressing. Somewhere in the early 2000s, or in the later decade of 2000, at Google AI, right, Andrew Ng, he came up with a concept that if you can use supervised learning and train it with a huge amount of data, it can perform some interesting things. And that he called as deep neural networks, right? So most of the advancements in AI that is happening today is because of deep learning neural networks, right? So that's where the technology stands today. But but as I told in the beginning, we are going to generalize this topic, and we are going to visualize the human brain and what are the capabilities in machine learning and deep learning that can mimic it, right? Because till now we still consider the human capabilities, human brain, human cognition, most of the time superior to our algorithms, right? So with that premise, I will go to the next slide. Okay. The figure that I depicted in the previous slide has many specialized areas that work together. The cortex, which I mentioned, is involved in thinking, and voluntary movement actions originate from here. The brain stem that exists between the spinal cord and the rest of the breath is involved in functions like breathing and sleeping. The basal ganglia, which I've highlighted here, are a cluster of structures in the center of brain. Basically, it is involved in coordinating messages between other brain areas. The cerebellum, which is at the base or the back of the brain, is responsible for coordination and balance. Apart from this, the human brain can also be visualized in terms of several lobes. The frontal lobes are involved in problem solving and judgment, right? The parietal lobes manage sensation, handwriting, body position. The temporal lobes are involved with memory and hearing. The occipital lobes are involved in brain's visual processing system. So these are certain things which come from the domain, right, of neuroscience, and we have just brushed our fundamentals. Okay. Now, whenever you have worked with neural networks, you have seen this diagram, which we call it as a neuron. So neuron or brain cells are the fundamental units of brain. So when you see a artificial neural network, this is the diagram that comes into picture. In this diagram, if you see at the edge, there is something called as a dendrite. Okay. So neuron to neuron connections. A single neuron cannot take any action on its own. It has to collectively interact with so many neurons to do some useful human body action. So how do neurons connect to one another? They connect through the dendrites. And these connections are called as synapses. And these are the sites at which information is carried. So as a computer science engineer, if you think as a computer as a node and the network as a connecting device, so if one node has to communicate with another node through message, it needs a connecting infrastructure, and the information they pass with each other are called as messages. We are all aware about it. Now they say human brain consists around 86 billion neurons. Can you imagine of building a deep neural network with 86 billion neurons? I don't know about it. And it has up to 1000 trillion connections. Now, as I told, it's the most, brain is the most evolved product of evolution. Can you just see its complexities? We just see an object, we understand the object, and we interpret it. But within our brain, so many neurons are interacting with other. They are collecting the sensory perception, trying to analyze what it is, and all this is done at a drop of a hat, that is within a nanosecond. So look, such sophisticated this organ that we have, which we call it as a human brain, right? Okay. So when I think about human brain, I begin by visualizing a branch of machine learning, which we call it as a reinforcement learning. So this was what I visualized for today's presentation. So all of you know that reinforcement learning is a type of machine learning technique. Here what happens, there is an agent and there is an environment. So let us imagine you go to the first day to your organization. You don't know where there are different units or different departments or offices or your HR office. What do? You just try to go with some pre-hand information that you have. Based on that information, you take an action. If you reach your destination, you have succeeded. If not, you retract and go through another path. At the end of the day, when you have discovered your entire organization, right, you have a policy by which you can go from your home or your starting point of your organization to the destination without any hiccups. That is how an agent tries to learn in an interactive environment. This learning is by trial and error, just like I mentioned, and for each of its action it gets its feedback. Now this feedback can be positive or negative, or it's also called as a reward or a penalty. If you do a good action, or if you take a correct action, you get rewarded. If you take a wrong action, you are penalized, right? So this is a fundamentals about reinforcement learning. Yeah, just a second, my screen has hanged. Okay. Yeah, as I mentioned, a reward is a positive value, and we associate to it to events that are in some way beneficial for survivor or pleasure, right? And we constantly adapt our behaviors to maximize rewards. All of you agree that in your academic life, you go on making achievements one after the other. Why do you go on making these achievements? Because that will help you to update your knowledge. That will help you to present yourself in a better knowledgeable manner to your students. It will help you to progress in your career. So all of you or all of us, we are interested in maximizing rewards. Your successful life is a sum of maximum rewards that you occurred. All of you agree? Okay. Okay. So this is known as associative learning. From this, we go to a famous scientist called as Pavlov, and his experiments with dogs. And this particular concept is very famous and is called as Pavlovian conditioning. What it means it exposes our ability to make predictions of future rewards given a cue. What is a cue? It may be like a sound of a bell that indicates food. Like suppose there is a dog. As soon as you ring a bell, it indicates to the dog that it is going to be served with food, right? So based on that, there are certain chemical reactions or hormones which get activated in its brain, which is kind of a reward signal and which makes it happy, right? Okay. So there are two types of conditioning. Another is called as the instrumental conditioning. Now, when we use functional MRI to
Like
obtain
reset any
blood
update.
oxygen, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, when we use functional MRI, we use to obtain blood oxygen level dependent bold contrast to analyze this human performing classical or instrumental conditional task. Okay. Now, when we analyze this, there is one particular part of the brain that is called as the striatum, and that stands out, right? And this striatum is special since it's a major target of a neurotransmitter dopamine hormone. Have you observed that you go for something like 6 to 12 kilometers of walk, and suddenly you feel refreshed, you feel happy, you feel light? That is because the dopamine hormones are getting released in your body, right? So dopamine plays an important role in reward based learning. Okay, if you have low levels of dopamine, that means you have some psychological related stress. If your dopamine levels are high, that means you are quite happy. Okay, so that's what the next statement means. Without dopamine, the normal function of associative learning is noticeably impeded. Okay, neurons in the brain that use dopamine as a neurotransmitter are referred to as dopaminergic neurons. Okay, now instead, dopamine was proposed as a means of representing the errors made in predicting rewards, right? Rather than directly dealing with dopamine as a neurotransmitter, the theory evolved as representing dopamine as an error made in predicting rewards. When we speak of these errors, we come to a special variant of or a special category of reinforcement learning called as temporal difference learning. Okay, now what is this temporal difference learning is? It uses a mathematical trick to replace complex reasoning about the future with a very simple learning procedure. What is this simple learning procedure? It tries to predict the combination of immediate reward and its own reward prediction at the next moment in time. So it has received some immediate reward and it's making a prediction of the reward at next moment in time. So it uses a combination of those. So when the next moment comes bearing new information, the new prediction is compared against what is expected to be, right? So it has already got a picture of what is to be expected and it has got a new prediction. So it tries to compare with them. The difference that it tries to compute is called as temporal difference. And it tries to adjust the old prediction towards the new prediction. Means you can visualize it as something which is updating itself, self-correcting itself based on something that is going to happen in the future. Okay. So by always striving to bring these numbers closer together at every moment in time, matching expectations to reality, the entire chain of prediction gradually becomes more accurate. Are you understanding it? Like suppose, suppose you visualize that going to get 45 marks in a paper, but the outcome was something like 65. So you will come to know that you made some wrong calculations. So next time, what happens here is, you see that there was some failure in your correction and you try to improve upon yourself. So every time when new information comes, you goes on updating yourself, right? Okay. So this temporal difference algorithm has received a lot of attention in the field of neuroscience. Okay. Now researchers discovered that the firing rate of dopamine neurons in the ventral tegmental area, which we call as VTA, and substantia nigra SNC appear to mimic the error function in the algorithm. And I just now explained what is the error function. The error function reports back the difference between the estimated reward at any given state or time step and the actual reward received. Okay. Huh. So India work on temporal difference models and reward related learning in human brain. O. Daherty and his team applied the test for regions manifesting this signal profile. So this dopamine signals that are received in the brain, what information do they communicate, right? This was analyzed by O'Doherty and his team. And the subjects were scanned, as I said earlier, using event-related fMRI while undergoing appetitive conditioning with a pleasant taste reward. So let us imagine you are eating a dish and this sounds very pleasant to your tongue. So suddenly some positive signals are released in your brain, which appreciates the taste. Okay. Further, what they did here is they used regression analysis, and this analysis revealed that responses in the ventral striatum and the orbifrontal cortex were significantly correlated with this error signal. As I mentioned, this dopamine neuron, we are interpreting it in terms of reward error signal, suggesting that during appetitive conditioning, computations described by temporal difference learning are expressed in the human brain. So the signals released by dopamine and the temporal difference learning are going hand in hand. So that was a great significant discovery. This was about our traditional reinforcement learning algorithm called as temporal difference learning. But as I mentioned, today's topic is deep learning. And I also mentioned that most of the advances in artificial intelligence that are occurring are because of deep learning neural networks, right? So I have a question to the audience. Can you explain me in a single line what is meant by a deep learning neural network? Anybody can answer. What is meant by a deep learning neural network? Anybody wants to answer?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, neural network, it consists of input layer, output
Okay.
layer, and it has in between hidden layers.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. See, when we speak of hidden layers, right, we also have artificial neural networks and we have deep learning neural networks, right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
there is
sir.
a thumb rule that the hidden layers should be greater than 3. Okay. And
Yes, sir.
and and up to 150 hidden minimum, some threshold up to 150 hidden layers can be implemented in a deep neural network. So if you want to put it in a single sentence, a deep learning neural network is nothing but a scalable neural network. Got it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So for this, deep learning neural network is a machine learning technique that teaches computers to do what comes naturally to humans. Like if through a sensory perception you are visualize something, right? It happens quite naturally because of your eyes and connectivity between eyes to your brain and visualization of the picture in the brain. Similarly, when we speak of machine learning algorithms, we want the algorithms to perform the tasks with minimal or no human intervention. The algorithms should develop the capabilities to learn on their own. Like if you are scanning a image and there is a fracture, it should be analyzed automatically through the machine learning algorithm without we writing a huge program of if else conditions. Got it? So that's the premise of machine learning. Okay. Now, this deep learning algorithm has become the key technology behind driverless cars, right? Voice to control consumer devices like phones, tablets, TVs, right? And as I mentioned earlier, like this was the outcome of supervised learning. So these deep learning algorithms allow a computer model to learn by performing classification tasks directly from images, text, or sound. So you can feed them with thousands of images, thousands of lines of text, or thousands of sound files, and your algorithm can learn on their own, right? That's quite interesting. Now, as we all know that the greatest, what you can say, reason for choosing deep learning algorithms is their accuracy. It is highly accurate as compared to traditional machine learning algorithm, right? More the data you feed to deep learning algorithm, the more the accuracy it achieves. That's what the next statement says. Models are trained by using a large set of labeled data and neural network architectures that contain many layers, right? When we speak of supervised learning, we speak of labeled data, right? Okay. Okay. Uh, the two things that we need here is deep learning requires large amount of data, and next thing here is deep learning requires substantial computing power. With the development of graphical processing units, it has become very efficient to run deep learning algorithms. But still, if you need to develop it for huge number of images, right, or sound files, you need to make use of the what you can say arrangements like clusters or cloud compute, cloud enabled devices. So what it helps here is it helps the development teams to reduce the training time. So if something would require from days, it would get reduced to hours or even less. Okay. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of my question, why deep learning networks are often referred as deep neural networks is because they contain more number of hidden layers. Like one of your attendees said that there are hidden layers between the input and output layer. I said greater than 3, but it can go up to as much as 150. Okay, so I covered deep learning. I'll again come back to reinforcement learning. As I gave an example to you, like when you entered your college the first day, you wanted to either to go to your department or you wanted to go to your classroom, but you did not know how to go there. And that's what is reinforcement learning. So what is reinforcement learning? Reinforcement learning is a branch of machine learning that is applied to solve problems that we know what we want, but not really sure how to get there. Okay. Now, within this reinforcement learning, there is something called as Q learning, right? And what is this Q learning? This Q learning is an algorithm in the RL for the purpose of policy learning. And what is this strategy or policy? This is at the core of the agent. And what this policy does is it dictates how does the agent interact with the environment, right? Like if you're traversing in a college, you have to use the proper corridors. You cannot keep a ladder and just scale from one end to another end. So your policy dictates how the agent interacts in the environment. Okay. So mathematically, the policy in a Q learning is modeled as an action value function, which represents how much is the agent willing to take an action, A is the agent, in a given state. And the outcome of this is called as a Q value. So an agent may have n number of options, and each of these options may return a Q value. The larger the Q value, the larger the possibility of the action A will be taken, since the agent expects to get more rewards if it has a larger Q value. Got it? It's pretty simple. Now, if we map this analogy of Q learning to supervised learning, here each data has a true label. That is the right answer. And our goal is to find the best hypothesis function to predict this label. The closer value between the predicted label and the true value, the better. Okay. Now we have understood what's deep learning. Now we have understood what's Q learning. We'll come up with a combination of this, and that's called as deep Q learning. Deep Q learning is similar to Q learning, which is a method of approximating the Q value function, which we call it as Q of S comma A. But here it is doing with the help of deep neural networks, and that's called as deep Q network or DQN. Okay. Now, here there was a team of scientists led by Cross, and that they observed that humans, see, what I'm trying to do here is every machine learning algorithm or concept I'm discussing, I'm trying to relate it again back to the human brain. So our next discussion will discuss that. So Cross observed that humans possess an exceptional aptitude to efficiently make decisions from high dimensional sensory observations, right? But it's unknown how the brain compactly represents the current state of environment to guide inference. So basically what it's trying to do,
And
it's trying to hack the deep Q network, and it's trying to analyze the nonlinear
self-assessment
map
report. Compliance is whatever
from
they have
multivariate
given the comments
inputs
for our
to the
reports.
values or potential
What is the
actions.
actions we have taken with respect to that?
Okay. The DQN as a model of brain activity and its
Compliances
behavior
comments.
in participants was analyzed for 3 Atari video games, again using fMRI, right? Hidden layers of DQN exhibited a striking resemblance to voxel activity in a distributed sensoriomotor network extending throughout the dorsovisual pathway into posterior parietal cortex. In short, the way the brain was working, the DQN was showing similar trend when it was trying to analyze the information that was being coming out of a video game being played by the participants.
Sir,
Okay.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
one
Yes,
second.
madam.
Slides are not changing, sir.
Okay. Okay. Fine. It may be an internet problem.
Is it
Uh,
same problem for the audience?
Now can you see it,
Yeah.
madam?
Yes. 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 Sir, sir one
Okay.
F5 can press the presentation mode.
Yeah, I'm in presentation mode, madam. Can I continue, madam? Is it okay?
Okay. Sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So as I mentioned, the human perception and the working of the deep Q network was similar in high dimensional sensory information. Okay. And these premotor cortices were called as mirror neurons. Okay. Okay. Now the most of the recent research work that we have discussed was applied to reinforcement learning to a single player games like Atari Breakout, adversarial games like StarCraft Go, where AI is pitted against a human player or another game playing bot. Okay, so this is what the technology of reinforcement learning mimic human brain exists so far. Now, in MIT Lincoln Laboratory, Sue and her team, right, they try to analyze if these reinforcement learning algorithms can be co-workers, reliable co-workers to humans. Can a reinforcement learning agent and a human together can play in a cooperative game and both can interact with one another? So, so, so what you all may guess? Can anyone from the audience tell what can be the outcome of this experiment? There is a human and there is a bot, and these two are together going to play a game against the adversaries or against other teams. So what can be the outcome of this correlation between humans and the bots? We'll see what happens, right? Okay. To just go into the depth, in one of the cases, reinforcement systems managed to hack the games and find tricks that baffled even the most talented and experienced human players. Like there is a famous example where the DeepMind's AlphaGo, uh, in its match against the Go Games world champion Lee Sedol, defeated him by a very unique move. And analysts initially thought that it was a mistake because it went against the intuitions of human experts. It made a move which baffled even the human experts. But when they analyzed it, it turned up the tide in the favor of the AI player. That is, the AI algorithm performs superior to the human. Okay. So Alan is one of the scientists in that MIT Lincoln laboratory. He says that the same kind of ingenuity can come into play when RL is teamed up with humans. I have deep learning, reinforcement learning algorithm and a human. Their deadly combination can defeat others. This is what Alan thought, or he proposed to investigate further. Okay. So there are three basic definitions you should understand. There is self-play. In the self-play, the agent plays with a copy of itself. There is a cross-play where the agent is teamed up with other types of agents. That is, one agent plays with a different agent. And there is a human play where the agent is cooperating with a human to play. Okay. So to test the efficiency of human AI cooperation, the researchers use SmartBot. What is a SmartBot? The SmartBot is the top performing rule-based AI system in self-play. So with its own copies, it's the winner. It's the most top performer. Then there is another bot, Hanabi bot. I'll tell you what is this Hanabi bot. It's called as other play. That is ranked as the highest in cross play and human play among RL algorithms. Okay. So in the experiments, human participants played several games of Hanabi with an AI teammate. What is this Hanabi game? It's a cooperative card game. Players are aware of other player cards, but not their own. And to help the other players, right, they can share some minimal information which will not compromise the game. So these players were exposed to both SmartBot and other play, but they weren't told which of the algorithms was their teammate. Okay. And to, as we are engineers, we have to measure our outcomes with metrics. So there were two types of metrics. There were objective metrics and there were subjective metrics. Objective metrics included scores, error rates, etc. Subjective metrics included the experience of human players, including the level of trust and the comfort they feel in their AI teammate, and their ability to understand the AI teammate's motives and predict its behavior. So these two types of metrics were considered. Now, there was no significant difference in the objective performance of the two AI agents, but the researchers expected the human players to have a more positive subjective experience with other play. Why with other play? Because this bot was involved in playing with other agents as well as human. So researchers found that human players would be more comfortable with other play. But the results were surprising, Alan said. He said, our results were surprising because how strongly human participants reacted to teaming with other play agents. In short, he briefed that they hated it. The humans hated the artificial intelligence players. Why? Because most of the time it was subjective metrics. They asked something and the agent interpreted it as something. You might have experienced this when you're booking an online appointment through a artificial intelligence bot. You have some expectations. What is your expectation? Your expectation is to book uh, a service which is nearest to you. What may be the motive of the artificial intelligence bot? It may want you to place in a service where it is available, which may not be nearest to you, right? So there may be conflict of interest, and you will slowly realize that the AI bot is not helping you out, and you may manually override it and make a phone call and make a book, your own booking. Are you understanding? So something like that happened in this experiment. This was done in MIT Lincoln Laboratory. So according to the surveys from the participants, all the participants were experienced Hanabi players, and they had a very poor performance with other play RL algorithm in comparison to the rule-based smartbot agent. They were more comfortable with the smartbot agent, which had the experience of playing with its similar copies and was highly rule-based as compared with the other play bot. So they said our current findings give an evidence that AI's objective task performance alone may not correlate to human trust and preference when collaborating with that AI. So just having a good objective metrics performance may not give you the enough confidence that the AI agent and the humans may work properly. So what they suggested here is there should be more trainable objective functions which should act as surrogates so that they can coordinate better between the artificial intelligence agents and the humans. Okay. So what all I'm saying now is the state of art research that is happening in the year 2021 and 2022 in trying to make algorithms collaborate with humans or with other artificial intelligence bots. So another example I will take, this is something which happens in Google AI. Mirosani and her team published an article. That article was chip placement with deep reinforcement learning. And this was published in the year 2021 in Nature, right? And what was their problem? They posed chip placement as a reinforcement learning problem when they trained an agent to optimize the quality of chip placements. If you see modern processors and all our computational systems, they have hundreds of chips, and their layout and design is a very complex problem which consumes a lot of time. They wanted to automate it with the help of reinforcement learning algorithms, especially deep reinforcement learning algorithms. Okay. So unlike prior methods, their approach had the ability to learn from past experience and improve over time. Okay. Learning from past experience and improving over time is correlated to something called as exploration versus exploitation. Exploration means you do a lot of exploring learning activities. Once you have learned, you start exploiting your information, right? If your exploration is less and exploitation is more, you do a lot of errors. If your exploring is more, exploitation is less, you take more accurate decisions, but you become very slow. So they say in reinforcement learning, you should balance between exploration and exploitation. You should learn what is required, take the next step, and progress ahead. If there is something drawback, again learn little, again move ahead, right? So there are various strategies for balancing exploration versus exploitation. Okay. So the Google AI team, right? They. If you look at the figure, you see when they trained over a great number of chip blocks, their method became more better rapidly at generating optimized placements for previously unseen chip blocks, right? So what they said here is when the placement of chips became scalable, their methods performance improved. Okay, the existing baselines required by human experts in the loop took several weeks to generate their method. Sorry, took several weeks to generate. Their method could generate the placements in under 6 hours, and that outperformed or matched their manual design counterparts. Okay, so they showed it to a specific chip, and that was Google accelerator chips, and their methods could be applied only to, or sorry, could be applicable to any kind of chip. Okay, if you look at the figure, if you see that the blue line, it is from scratch, right? And it has been only pre-trained but not fine-tuned. If you look at the red line, it has been pre-trained and fine-tuned. If you see that the policy trained from scratch takes much longer, that is, even it takes greater than 24 hours to converge, and its chip placements are worse than what the fine-tuned policy achieves in less than 12 hours. Are you understanding? So you have a pre-trained and a fine-tuned chip placement policy, which is being dictated by a deep learning, a reinforcement learning, and it is performing much better than just a pre-trained policy. So at the end, I would say that application of reinforcement learnings with deep learning has a lot of potential, right? It can be used to model rewards as error signals. I gave an example of TD learning, and that was your dopamine signal. It can be used to collaborative work between AI and humans. It can be used for complex problems like chip placements, right? So as I told you at the beginning, right, deep reinforcement learning and its application to neuroscience has a lot of potential to mimic human brain and its functions. Okay, now I've come to my slides, right? These are my references. Okay, now before I finish, I have a question to the audience. When we speak of machine learning, there are two pillars. One is supervised learning and another is unsupervised learning. Where does the reinforcement learning fit in? Can anybody from the audience explain or answer?
Sir,
Yes,
hello, sir.
yes, madam.
Same thing. Slide is not changing, sir.
Okay, if I go in
Once
slide
I
mode, it
just
will not. Is it?
exit and then, yeah, now it's.
Yeah. If I go in the presentation mode, it will not change. So I'll keep it like this. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Anybody from the audience would like to answer this question? Okay. We'll keep the question as an open problem. Now, if you'll want to discuss anything or any of your research uses mimicking brain or would like to discuss anything, I'm open for questions. Yeah, I see something in the chat window. You can even type in the chat window. Yeah. Someone answered the question, game playing. Yeah. I think if you have tried to answer my question, see, traditionally I used to work in, yeah, okay. I used to work in reinforcement learning long ago, and they would say that reinforcement learning is a combination of supervised and unsupervised learning. That is, initially it has to be trained like a supervised learning, and then it explores the model or the environment in an unsupervised manner. But the newer generations of people, they are saying there are three pillars of machine learning. One is called as supervised learning, another is called as unsupervised learning, and the third pillar they are called as reinforcement learning. So if you are working with autonomous vehicles like driverless cars, right, or you are working where you have to take decisions similar to function of human brains, there is a lot of potential in reinforcement learning. And especially with these deep reinforcement learnings, where the decision is taken by a deep neural network, there are a lot of potentialities in terms of scalabilities. Like, let us imagine I have a maze and I have some 100 units in that maze. Then my traditional Q learning will work. But if I have 10,000 mazes, then the machine learning algorithm becomes very slow. In such scenarios, we need to use of deep Q learning networks. Is it clear? The person who answered game playing. Huh? Anybody else would like to ask any other questions? I hope the audience like the topic. Feel free to ask questions. I finished little earlier, huh? So my recordings are available with the event organizers. Right, you all can explore it further for your research.
Hello, sir.
Yes, madam.
Any queries from the participants? So presentation is done.
Yes, madam. Presentation is done.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. We are very grateful to have Dr. Shrirang Kulkarni here as a speaker for our FDP. So on behalf of Department of Electronics and Communication, SR University, I express my deepest gratitude. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation and giving a presentation here and being with us. Thank you, audience, for your patience and cooperation. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
Audience, the next session will be at 11:30 by Dr. Veena Divya and Rajeshri from RVCE on medical image processing using CNN, challenges and opportunities. So we'll continue at 11:30. Thank you.